What's up, Green Nation? Today the vibe is serious and electric. There's something happening behind the scenes of this offense that completely changes the mood for the next matchup. And honestly, for the first time in weeks, you can feel a spark of hope where there was only concern. That structure that seemed ready to collapse is slowly finding its balance again, and that changes everything. But before we dive into the breakdown that might explain the direction of this season, hit that like button to boost the channel. And of course, drop a comment telling me what you think about this moment for the offense and what you expect for the next game. Now buckle up, because what's coming next might be exactly the turning point every fan has been waiting for. Go Eagles! It feels like every time this rivalry comes around, the temperature inside the city rises a few degrees. And this week, with everything that has unfolded inside the NovaCare complex, the tension is even heavier. The injury updates, the growing concerns about the offense, the noise around Jalen Hurts, and the simple fact that it's Dallas week, everything is colliding at once, creating the kind of atmosphere that Eagles fans recognize instantly. It's the feeling that something big is coming, and every small detail matters. And right now, the details are stacking up fast. Let's start with the one thing that has hovered over this team since week 1, stability on the offensive line. The truth is, the Eagles haven't had a single moment this season where their original 5 starters played consistently together, and that lack of continuity has shown up across every aspect of the offense. But the update on Cam Jurgens suddenly shifts the conversation. For weeks, he simply hasn't looked right. Back surgery in the offseason, then the knee injury against Minnesota, and now the concussion. But seeing him back on the field, even in a limited capacity, is a sign this team desperately needed. He was going through one-on-one drills, moving, communicating, showing progress. That tells you he's close, maybe even on track to play Sunday. But even if he does, the reality is harsh. Lane Johnson won't be out there, and that changes everything about the identity of this offense. Just consider how unusual this is. Only one game all season where the original starting offensive line played every snap together. For a team built on physicality, timing, and trench dominance, that lack of cohesion has been a direct hit. The run game hasn't looked like the run game everyone expected. Pass protection hasn't looked like the elite wall it has been for years. And the result has been an offense that feels disjointed, hesitant, and far too conservative for the amount of talent it features. And the timing couldn't be worse, because across the field on Sunday is Dallas, and Dallas just added Quinnen Williams. The Cowboys' interior defensive line was already disruptive, and now with Williams, Kenny Clark, and Osa Odighizuwa rotating and collapsing pockets, the Eagles' interior trio is facing one of its biggest challenges of the season. Williams' debut performance in a Cowboys uniform was dominant, but context matters. The Raiders' offensive line is a mess. Still, the tape doesn't lie. His explosion, leverage, and ability to win quickly inside are real problems for any team, especially one trying to rebuild continuity on the fly. And it's not just the trenches. Dak Prescott is coming in banged up but dangerous. The hip injury caught everyone by surprise, but according to Brian Schottenheimer, he's expected to play. And historically, he has been a problem for Philadelphia. His numbers against the Eagles at home are almost too good, like something out of a rivalry nightmare. A 6-1 record, nearly 300 yards per game, efficient, productive, and confident. And inside the division overall, he's been even better, going 21-2 at home against NFC East opponents. But the stat that really jumps out, the Cowboys haven't lost a home game with a healthy Dak to an NFC East team since November 19, 2017. That's how long it's been. And that's what the Eagles are walking into on Sunday. Then there's the classic Cowboys storyline of the week, because of course something wild always happens with that franchise. CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens benched on the opening drive because they missed curfew after being out late at Red Rock Casino. Lamb insisted he wasn't throwing up, insisted he knows how to hold his liquor, but the story itself feels straight out of Dallas 90s drama playbook. While the Cowboys keep insisting they're buttoned-up contenders, moments like this are reminders that the chaos in that building never sleeps. But let's shift to the subject that has taken over every conversation in the city, the chatter around Jalen Hurts. The Derek Gunn report hit hard, suggesting internal frustration with his play. And on the surface, you can see why that noise exists. The offense hasn't lived up to the expectations set last season. It's been conservative, simplified, even predictable at times. The explosive plays haven't been there, the rhythm hasn't been consistent, and with 10 of 11 starters returning from last year's Super Bowl team, every fan has asked the same question: why isn't this offense better? But the numbers inside the report paint a completely different picture of Hurts' individual performance. 5th in true passer rating, first in pressure completion percentage, third in passer rating versus man, 12 in passer rating versus zone, only 2 turnovers all year, and since 2022, he's 32-1 when the Eagles win the turnover battle. He's 51-4 as a starting quarterback overall. Whether the offense looks flashy or not, he wins. And Nick Sirianni wins. That's why they're 8-2. That's why the conservative approach exists. And that's why, regardless of the noise, regardless of the criticism, the formula still works. But it doesn't change the reality that the offense must play better, because eventually, the margin for error shrinks. And that brings us back to this week. The injuries, the offensive inconsistency, the rivalry, the pressure, the doubts, the numbers, the noise, all of it converging at AT&T Stadium in a moment that feels like a turning point for both teams. The question now is simple. With everything happening around them, how do you see the Eagles responding in this matchup? Because when you stack all the storylines on top of each other, you start to see the bigger picture forming. This isn't just another mid-season test. It's not simply another chapter of Eagles versus Cowboys. It feels like one of those weeks where the identity of a team either sharpens or cracks. And with everything that has come out publicly, from injuries to internal frustrations, this locker room is stepping into a moment where leadership matters more than scheme, more than numbers, more than anything that appears on a stat sheet. And Jalen Hurts has already been in this exact type of moment before. Pressure doesn't shrink him. Criticism doesn't pull him apart. And every time the outside world has tried to make noise loud enough to rattle this organization, he's been the one steadying the entire operation. That's why the narrative that he's somehow the problem doesn't match what this team has actually lived through. He's kept their floor high even when the offense hasn't found its ceiling. He's kept games clean when the margins have been thin. And he's held together a team that has faced weekly turbulence, from inconsistency up front to the conservative play calling that has limited the offense's ability to open up the field. And that brings us back to what this matchup truly demands. Dallas has created pressure in the worst possible place for Philadelphia, the interior. Quinnen Williams, Kenny Clark, and Osa Odigizua have the ability to force the Eagles into uncomfortable situations early. They can push the pocket, disrupt timing, and create the type of chaos that forces quick decisions. And with Lane Johnson out, the margin for error shrinks even further. The Eagles need Cam Jurgens healthy. They need communication and protection to be sharp. They need the interior trio to play their cleanest game of the season, because anything less is exactly how Dallas turns this into a trench battle loss. But there's also a psychological weight to this rivalry, especially with Dak Prescott's history against the Eagles. He has found ways to thrive in these moments, and Dallas knows it. They trust him at home. They trust him against divisional opponents, and they use that confidence to build pressure. That's exactly why Philadelphia must approach this matchup with a completely different level of intensity than they've shown the last few weeks. This is not a game where the offense can take a quarter to find itself. Not a game where they can lean on clean football and hope the opponent cracks first. This is one of those nights where the offense has to play with purpose immediately, because Dallas will attack from the opening snap. And yet, for all the tension building around this matchup, there's an equal amount of opportunity. This team is 8-2. They win when they play disciplined. They win when they win the turnover battle. They win when they stay true to who they are, and despite the frustration surrounding the offense's lack of explosion, they've remained a top-tier team because their foundation has stayed intact. That's why this week feels like a crossroads. Not because the season is in jeopardy, but because this is the moment where the Eagles can silence every narrative that has grown louder in the last month. And if they walk into AT&T Stadium and punch first, if the offensive line stabilizes, if the offense gets back to trusting its identity, if Hurts plays the way he has statistically all year despite the noise, everything swirling around this team will evaporate instantly. Winning is the cure. Winning ends discussions. Winning resets the tone for the entire second half of the season. So now it shifts to you watching at home. If you're riding with this channel, if you're all in on this team and on this rivalry week, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and stay locked in, because more breakdowns and updates are coming. And of course, there's another video on your screen right now that you can click to keep the conversation going. And the thing is, once you step back and look at the full picture of this week, it feels almost cinematic. Every major storyline that has followed this team all season hits its peak at the exact same time. The injuries on the offensive line, the constant shuffle that has kept this unit from ever settling into the powerhouse identity it's known for, the weight of facing Dallas with a compromised right side, while the Cowboys bring in an all-pro caliber defensive tackle who just posted a monster performance in his very first game with them, the chatter around Jalen Hurts and the sudden wave of outside noise questioning things that haven't ever defined him. And then on top of all of it, a division rival playing at home with the confidence of a quarterback who hasn't lost to an NFC East team in his own building with full health since before the Eagles even won their first Super Bowl. It's the perfect storm, but it's also the perfect test. Nights like this reveal what a team really is. They strip away the comfort, the excuses, the safety net. They force players to step into the spotlight with nothing to hide behind. And that's why there's such a strange calm coming out of the building despite everything swirling around it. Because the players who matter most on this roster, especially the quarterback, are built for this type of moment. They don't run from pressure. They don't shrink under criticism. They don't panic just because the outside world has something to say. And honestly, that's where this game might truly swing. Not just in matchups, not just in health, but in composure. Dallas thrives when opponents give them mistakes. They feed off turnovers. They rely on emotional swings. They punish teams that break structure or lose discipline. And the Eagles, for all their flaws this season, have been the complete opposite. When they take care of the football, they are essentially unbeatable. When they play a clean game, the results speak for themselves. 40-2 under Nick Sirianni when they win the turnover battle, 32-1 for Jalen Hurts since 2022 in those same conditions. Those numbers don't exist by accident. They exist because this team leans on structure, discipline, and situational mastery at levels most teams simply don't reach. So while the spotlight will be on injuries, on matchups, on Dak's history, on Quinnen Williams' impact, on interior offensive line play, and on the noise surrounding Jalen Hurts, the truth might be far more simple. If the Eagles step onto that field and protect the football, if they avoid unnecessary risks, if they keep the offense stable and allow Hurts to run the game the way he has all year, this matchup levels out in a way that numbers and narratives don't initially reflect. But none of that happens without execution. None of it matters without the offensive line holding its own long enough for Hurts to operate. And none of it matters if the Eagles walk into this game without the edge required for a rivalry like this. That's the intangible that can't be measured but is always felt. This team knows what Dallas brings in these moments. They know the environment. They know the pressure. They know the consequences. And they know exactly what it looks like when a statement win is there to be taken. So this is where the Eagles find out what their identity truly is right now. Not the polished version from last season, not the expectation from the offseason, but the real one. The one shaped through adversity, injuries, uneven performances, and scrutiny. And if they want to reclaim the narrative, regain their confidence, and walk into the final stretch of the season with momentum instead of doubt, it starts here, in a stadium that has humbled countless NFC East opponents for almost a decade. And if you're locked in for this ride, if you're ready for breakdowns, reactions, and every storyline that follows this matchup, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and stick around. The next video is already on your screen right now waiting for you to click. And the truth is, even after everything we've already laid out, there's still more weight pressing down on this moment than most people realize. Because when you strip away the stats, the charts, the talking points, what's left is the emotional reality of a team that has been grinding through turbulence all season long. They haven't had the continuity they expected. They haven't had the offensive rhythm they believed would carry over from last year. They haven't had the week-to-week stability that usually defines a veteran roster with championship experience. And somehow, through all of that, they're still winning. That's what makes this matchup even more intriguing. It's not just the numbers that shape the stakes, it's the context behind them. An offensive line that has barely been whole for a single game. A quarterback who, despite the outside noise, is quietly putting together one of the most efficient seasons in the league. A team that has fought through injuries, inconsistencies, and scrutiny yet still sits at 8-2. That combination creates a level of toughness that doesn't always show up on highlight reels, but it absolutely shows up when games like this one arrive. Because the Cowboys will come in with confidence, they always do at home, especially with Dak's record inside that building. But confidence alone doesn't win rivalry games. Discipline does. Execution does. Physicality does. And the Eagles still carry those traits, even if they've been overshadowed by how often this offense has felt out of sync. That's why this matchup has the potential to flip narratives so quickly. If Philadelphia walks in and asserts itself early, controls the tempo, protects the football, neutralizes interior pressure, plays clean, everything surrounding this team shifts. The outside noise quiets. The pressure releases. The conversation changes from doubts to reinforcement. And that's why this game feels less like a simple stop on the schedule and more like a pivot point. A moment where the locker room can either absorb the weight of everything thrown at them or push back hard enough to reclaim the season's direction. And when you think about how this team has operated under Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, the pattern is unmistakable. They respond in moments like this. They stabilize when the foundation gets shaken. They lean on the same formula that has put them among the league's most consistent winners over the last several years. Play clean, protect the football, don't give opponents extra possessions, trust your identity even when the execution isn't perfect. That's what keeps a team afloat when the style points aren't there. Dallas wants chaos. They want confusion, mistakes, emotional swings, and turnovers. They want the game to feel unstable. Philadelphia wins when the opposite happens, when the game becomes controlled, structured, methodical, and played on their terms. And that contrast is exactly why this matchup is so fascinating. It's not just about who plays better, it's about who imposes their version of football. And now, with everything that has built up to this moment, the stage is set. Whatever happens next won't just influence the division, it will shape how this team is perceived, how it moves forward, and how it handles the pressure that has attached itself to the 2024 season. If you're dialed into every detail like we are, make sure you hit subscribe, drop that like, and check out the next video already waiting for you on the screen. It breaks down everything you need to know heading into this matchup. And what makes this stretch even more compelling is the way every storyline seems to be tightening at the exact same time, like the whole season is funneling into this one moment. The tension isn't coming from panic, it's coming from expectation, from the understanding inside the building that this roster is too talented to keep playing below its ceiling. And when that kind of awareness grows, players don't shy away from it. They get sharper, more intentional, more focused, because they know the next opportunity can shift everything. That's exactly why this matchup feels so defining. Not because of playoff implications, not because of standings, but because of clarity. Whichever team walks out of this game with control will walk out with a narrative that feels earned. And for the Eagles, this is the window to recalibrate, to show that the uneven stretches of the season aren't signs of a deeper problem. They're simply the product of instability on the offensive line and the natural adjustment of having a new coordinator shaping the offense. Even the defensive pressure Dallas brings into this game fits into that bigger picture. Quinnen Williams didn't land there quietly. He showed up and immediately created disruption. 7 pressures, a sack and a half, and a tape that shows exactly why Jerry Jones was smiling in the suite. But again, context matters. That dominance came against one of the worst interior offensive lines in the league. The Eagles aren't the Raiders. Even with injuries, even with inconsistency, this unit has the talent and physicality to stand its ground when it's locked in. And that's the key, composure in the trenches. Because if the Eagles do that, if they neutralize the interior just enough for Jalen Hurts to get into rhythm, the entire flow of the game changes. Hurts has been statistically excellent against pressure this season. He's been efficient, decisive, and unshakable. The numbers from the report show that clearly, and that's why giving him even a narrow window is enough for him to take control of a game like this. He doesn't need perfection around him. He just needs functionality. And that's exactly what Philadelphia is trying to reestablish right now. This is also a moment where leadership becomes more important than any play design. You can feel that in how the locker room has responded to the Derek Gunn report, not with drama, not with finger-pointing, but with silence and focus. If there were fractures inside the team, they would have shown up weeks ago. Instead, the noise has been met with the same calm demeanor that Jalen Hurts has carried since the day he took over this franchise. And that's another layer to this matchup, the emotional steadiness of the quarterback. Dallas is volatile. They live off momentum swings, off big plays, off emotional bursts that swing games in their direction. But Philadelphia is the opposite. They choke out chaos. They minimize mistakes. They force opponents to win the hard way, over and over again, without shortcuts. And that contrast is why this rivalry produces moments that feel bigger than the standings. Sunday isn't just another game. It's the moment where this team decides what kind of season this is going to be. Whether the early inconsistencies define the narrative, or whether they become the tension-filled opening chapters of a season that turned at the right moment. And if you're tuned in, if you're locked into every breakdown and every angle like we are here, hit subscribe, drop a like, and check the next video already queued up on your screen. It'll take you even deeper into what's at stake this week. And even as everything around this matchup keeps building, there's a certain intensity settling over the team that feels different from earlier in the season. Back in September, the conversations were about finding rhythm, adapting to a new coordinator, and waiting for the offense to click. But now, as they step into this moment, the tone is sharper. The urgency is clearer. It's no longer about waiting for things to fall into place. It's about forcing them to. And that mindset is exactly what separates teams that survive the mid-season grind from teams that take control of it. That shift is happening because the players understand the stakes without anyone needing to say it out loud. They know the injuries have reshaped their identity week to week. They know the offensive execution hasn't met expectations. They know Dallas is coming in with confidence after adding a disruptive force inside. and they know the national narrative is circling around Jalen Hurts in a way that feels disconnected from the actual performance he's put on the field. But they also know something else, something far more important. They're 8-2 for a reason, and none of those wins were handed to them. They've earned every one despite the turbulence. They've adapted on the fly. They've leaned on discipline in moments when flash wasn't available. And that's why, when a week like this arrives, they don't flinch. They don't get distracted by outside conversations. They step into the moment believing they're built for it. And this matchup will demand every bit of that belief. Because Dallas will test the Eagles exactly where they've been most vulnerable: interior pressure, tempo, and forcing the offense into quick decisions. The Cowboys want this game to speed up emotionally. They want it to get messy, to get frantic, to turn into a game of reactions instead of structure. That's where they're at their best. But Philadelphia wins when the opposite happens. When the offense settles in. When Jalen Hurts controls the pace. When the trenches dictate the rhythm instead of absorbing it. When the team leans on its identity instead of chasing urgency. And that's why so much of this matchup may come down to the first quarter. Not because of points, but because of personality. Whoever establishes the tone early will likely carry the emotional edge for the rest of the night. You can almost feel that the Eagles understand this too. There's a laser-focused quality to the way the players have handled this week. No panic, no drama, no outward frustration. Just a collective acknowledgement that the performance on Sunday will answer every question better than any quote or report ever could. And that's why this moment feels like a turning point. Not because the season depends on it, but because the season's definition might. A win here quiets the noise, settles the debates, restores momentum, and rebuilds confidence inside and outside the locker room. A win here resets everything around the offense and reminds people exactly who Jalen Hurts is and what this team looks like when it leans into its strengths. This is where the Eagles get to write the next chapter on their terms. And if you're staying locked in with every update, breakdown, and storyline, hit subscribe, drop a like to support the channel, and tap the next video that's already on your screen. It'll take you even deeper into everything leading into this massive matchup. A win here quiets the noise, settles the debates, restores momentum, and rebuilds confidence inside and outside the locker room. A win here resets everything around the offense and reminds people exactly who Jalen Hurts is and what this team looks like when it leans into its strengths. This is where the Eagles get to write the next chapter on their terms. And if you're staying locked in with every update, breakdown, and storyline, hit subscribe, drop a like to support the channel, and tap the next video that's already on your screen. It'll take you even deeper into everything leading into this massive match.